I'm Jeff Matlow. Welcome to the best leadership podcast ever. Welcome back to the best leadership podcast ever. It is great to have you here. As you know, every week we take a look at your daily habits and reframe them so you can excel and catapult in your career. I love this. I'm excited about this. My name is Jeff Matlow. I am a 3-time entrepreneur and a leadership coach. I help quickly turn teams into highly productive collaborative units. If you want to know more, go to bytitleonly.com. But enough about me. Let's talk about me some more. Because I don't know if you know this, but I'm a white male in the United States. And I recognize my privilege being a white male in the United States. In fact, I enjoy my privilege. It works in my favor all the time. And whether you like it or not, and whether you agree with me or not, the United States was built to support the white male with means. That's the way it's been, and that's the way it is. White men with means have more opportunities and, in general, an easier time than others climbing the ladder to success. It's damn good to be a white man with means in the United States. But more on my privilege in a second. First, let's talk about you. You're biased. I know that for a fact. I don't know you well. I mean, you never invited me over for dinner or anything, but I don't have to taste your lasagna recipe to know that you're biased. Here's your problem. 3 things. You always assume that the world revolves around you, but it doesn't. You assume that everybody thinks like you, but they don't. And you assume that everybody will have the same beliefs as you, but they won't. You may think that what I'm saying is a load of hooey. You may think that you don't even do any of that stuff. But I'm not wrong. You are. And if you think I'm wrong with this, it's just proof that you're biased. In reality, your bias is the same bias that everybody has. And when I say everybody, I mean every human being in human history. It's called projection bias. Projection bias is the assumption that everybody else thinks, feels, and acts like you. We project our mental state onto other people. Projection bias is part of human nature. Some of us have it stronger than others, but we all have it in one way or another. That includes you, whether you want to accept it or not. And that brings us right back to my privileged life as a white male. I've heard a bunch of people say that anybody can achieve success with enough personal grit and hard work. In fact, that's become known as the American dream. No matter who you are and what background you come from, if you just work hard enough, you can achieve wealth and happiness and all those other things that are in that Norman Rockwell painting. But that's bullshit. It should come as no surprise that the concept of the American dream was created by a rich white guy who was born into a rich white family. His name is James Truslow Adams. The American dream is a great example of projection bias from the rich white male perspective. But I don't fault Mr. Adams for his biased point of view. After all, his perspective is just a byproduct of the projection bias from a previous group of rich white guys, our country's founding fathers. Back in 1776, the rich white guys we call our founding fathers wrote and ratified a constitution that states all men are created equal. But back then, the term men specifically referred to white men who owned property. Not women, not non-whites, not poor people, and definitely not slaves. The U.S. Constitution essentially says all white men of means are created equal. But seriously, should we expect anything different? When you get a homogenous group of people together to come up with rules, of course they're going to come up with the rules that align with their thinking. Why wouldn't they? So yes, the American dream is real. As long as you're a white man and you work hard and your parents paid for your college education and you call in a favor or two from your father's friends, then yeah, the American dream is waiting for you right down there on the corner of power and privilege. The somewhat obvious problem with projection bias is that it only benefits you if society at a macro level or your company culture at a micro level is aligned with your thinking. For everyone else, it's this inherent bias that blocks the marginalized masses from getting a fair shot at climbing the proverbial ladder to success. Women, people of color, or people who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are continually faced with inherent hurdles in their attempts to achieve this so-called American dream. That's fact. It happens all the time, every day, everywhere. Structural inequalities in our society create unequal opportunities. If you don't think that's true, it's because you refuse to accept your bias. Want an example? Good, because I'm going to give you one anyway. Imagine you're a non-white single parent who can't afford a car or childcare. You're reliant on unreliable public transportation to get to and from work, which means you could be late on any given day. You're reliant on your kids staying safe and healthy, which means if they get sick, you have to take time off work. So how the heck are you going to hold down a steady job? You sure as hell won't be allowed to get anywhere near the American dream. That door is shut and triple locked on your ass. I see projection bias play out all the time in my leadership coaching business. This is especially true in my work with female leaders who are battling their way through a male-dominated company culture. If you're a woman, a person of color, or someone from an economically disadvantaged background, you're not just fighting your own battles, you're fighting against the biases and blind spots of the people in power. Leaders unconsciously hire and promote the people who remind them of themselves. Why? Projection bias. This bias creates a loop. The leaders at the top consider themselves the standard of leadership. That's their job, which means they don't change the rules or structures that benefit them. To remove the impact of projection bias, you have to remove the thinking of some of the leaders, which means you have to remove some of the leaders. And I need to be clear here. I'm definitely not saying that all white male leaders are consciously racist, misogynistic, or exclusionary. Not in the slightest. It just means that the concept of fairness is unconsciously shaped by their projection bias. So what happens when women, people of color, or anyone else who doesn't fit the mold tries to rise to the top? Naturally, they're evaluated against a white male standard, a standard that they can't and shouldn't have to ever meet. I see this dichotomy all the time from male leaders in my coaching practice. Here's what I mean. When a man is assertive, he's seen as confident. When a woman is, she's difficult. When a man takes risks, he's bold. When a woman does, she's reckless. When a man is emotional, he's seen as passionate. When a woman is, she's unstable or fragile. Every time I write an article or release a podcast or put a social post out about gender or racial disparities, inevitably some people are going to tell me I'm full of crap. They'll tell me that if women and people of color just worked harder or were smarter, they'd have the same opportunities as anybody else. They tell me that sticking up for gender inequality is so pre-2020. I actually got that one. And that's why I'm recording this podcast. Because everybody who slams me for talking about this type of stuff, and everybody who unsubscribes from my podcast or newsletter when I challenge their feelings of superiority, they all need to understand the role that projection bias plays in their perception of the world. And if you don't like what I'm saying here, it's simply proof that I'm right. It's your projection bias. So next time you find yourself judging another person for their behavior, maybe it's time to start asking yourself some questions. Like, what assumptions am I making about their abilities? Or what challenges could they be facing that I don't understand? Getting the answers to these questions isn't even the important part. The important part is that you bother to ponder the question in the first place. After all, if you want to be a great leader, you need to learn how to pull people up the ladder. And the first step is to become aware of when your foot is stepping on the fingers of the person climbing the rung below. If any of this resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me, leadership@bytitleonly.com. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Look forward to talking to you next week. Bye.